On April 10, 1912, the RMS Titanic embarked on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, destined for New York City. This was not just any voyage, but one that was to mark a significant chapter in maritime history. The Titanic was a symbol of human ambition and technological prowess, a floating palace that was deemed unsinkable by its creators. This marvel of engineering was the largest ship of its era, a testament to the progress of the early 20th century. Just to give you a sense, it was approximately 882 feet long. That's about the height of a 90-story skyscraper. It was a spectacle that captured the world's attention, a symbol of luxury and grandeur that was unparalleled. The Titanic was a floating city, complete with opulent interiors, lavish dining rooms, and state-of-the-art facilities. It had everything from grand staircases and elegant suites to heated swimming pools and a gymnasium. It was the epitome of luxury, a beacon of sophistication and elegance that was beyond imagination. But the Titanic was more than just a ship for the wealthy. It was a vessel of hope for many who were seeking a better life on the other side of the Atlantic. The passenger list was diverse, including some of the richest people in the world, middle-class families, artists, and immigrants dreaming of a new beginning in America. Historians and experts have often reflected on the significance of the Titanic. Its splendor represented the optimism of an age that believed in the limitless potential of human ingenuity. It was a symbol of an era that was rapidly changing, a time of transition and transformation. Yet, beneath the sheen of luxury and the promise of an unforgettable journey, no one could have foreseen the tragic fate that awaited this magnificent vessel. The Titanic, in all its grandeur, was about to embark on a journey that would etch its name in history, not for its splendor or size, but for a disaster that would forever remind us of the power of nature and the fragility of human life. With its opulent interiors, lavish dining rooms, and state-of-the-art facilities, Titanic attracted passengers from all walks of life. But as we all know, this journey was not destined to reach its intended destination. Instead, it became a voyage that would be remembered for all the wrong reasons. My great-grandfather was a crew member on the Titanic. His stories have been passed down through generations. He was a stoker, responsible for keeping the ship's enormous engines running by shoveling coal into the furnaces. He often spoke of the grueling work, the unbearable heat, and the camaraderie among the crew. But what stuck with him most was that fateful night, the shock of the collision, the scramble to understand what was happening, and the ultimate realization that the ship was going down. Let's also hear from Emily, whose great-aunt traveled on the Titanic as a second-class passenger. Emily says her great-aunt often recounted the grandeur of the ship, the sumptuous meals, and the lively social events. But when the iceberg hit, the grandeur faded into chaos. She vividly remembered the fear, the confusion, the desperate rush for lifeboats. Another descendant, George, talks about his grandfather, a first-class passenger. His grandfather was drawn to the Titanic by its promise of luxury and opulence. He was among the lucky few who secured a place on a lifeboat, but the memory of leaving others behind haunted him for the rest of his life. And then there's the story of Maggie, a third-class passenger, as told by her granddaughter. Maggie was an Irish immigrant seeking a new life in America. She boarded the Titanic full of dreams and hopes, only to face a nightmare. Maggie managed to survive, clinging to a piece of wreckage until she was rescued. But the experience left her scarred, and the memories of that dreadful night stayed with her until her last breath. Each of these stories paints a vivid picture of life aboard the Titanic, providing us with a deeply personal connection to this historical event. These tales of survival, loss, and resilience remind us that behind the grandeur and the tragedy, there were ordinary people, each with their own story to tell. My grandmother was a passenger in third class. She survived, but the memories haunted her for the rest of her life. But tragedy struck in the early hours of April 15, 1912, when Titanic collided with an iceberg in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic. The night was calm, the sea as clear as glass, and the moonlight was nowhere to be found. The iceberg, a silent sentinel in the dark, was not spotted until it was too late. The Titanic, this marvel of human ingenuity, was steaming ahead at full speed when the watchman in the crow's nest spotted the iceberg directly in the ship's path. Despite the crew's best efforts to steer clear, the ship struck the iceberg, its sharp edges slashing a mortal wound into the Titanic's starboard side. In the moments following the collision, there was an eerie silence, a calm before the storm of panic that would soon envelop the ship. The gravity of the situation was not immediately apparent to the passengers. A survivor recounted, "There was a slight shudder, like the ship had run over 1,000 pebbles. At first, we didn't think much of it. But as the water began to pour into the ship's lower compartments, it became clear that the Titanic was in grave danger." The ship's architect, Thomas Andrews, after assessing the damage, declared the unthinkable. The Titanic was going to sink. Panic set in as the crew began to lower the lifeboats. "It was chaos," another survivor recalled. "People were running, screaming, praying. The crew was trying to maintain order, but there were not enough lifeboats for everyone." As the ship began to tilt, the scramble for survival became a desperate struggle. The water was freezing. You could hear the cries for help growing fainter as the ship slipped further beneath the waves, a survivor remembered. Despite the heroic efforts of many, the lifeboats rowed away from the sinking ship with many seats unfilled. The band played on, their music a haunting soundtrack to the unfolding tragedy. As the Titanic slowly slipped beneath the waves, over 1,500 souls lost their lives, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and loss. The unsinkable ship had sunk, marking one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. In the aftermath of the disaster, investigations were launched to determine what went wrong and who was to blame. The sinking of the Titanic was not just a heartbreaking loss of life, but also a wake-up call to the world about the dangers that lurked in the vast, unpredictable ocean. The first official inquiry took place in the United States, led by Senator William Alden Smith. The investigation was extensive, with over 60 witnesses including surviving passengers, crew members, and maritime experts. The main question on everyone's mind: why did the Unsinkable sink? The inquiry revealed several factors. Firstly, the Titanic had been traveling at a high speed despite iceberg warnings. Additionally, it came to light that there were only enough lifeboats for about half of the people on board. This was due to outdated maritime safety regulations that had not kept pace with the size and capacity of new ships like the Titanic. Across the Atlantic, a similar investigation was underway in the United Kingdom, led by Lord Mersey. This inquiry echoed the findings of the American investigation and added another critical point: the crew had not been properly trained in emergency procedures. The investigations painted a picture of a disaster that was, in many ways, preventable. They exposed a complacency towards safety in the face of technological advancements and a fatal underestimation of the ocean's dangers. In response to these findings, countries around the world took action. The first International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea was held in 1913, resulting in new safety measures such as mandatory lifeboat drills, sufficient lifeboats for all passengers and crew, and the establishment of the International Ice Patrol to monitor iceberg activity in the North Atlantic. The Titanic tragedy exposed flaws in maritime safety regulations and sparked reforms that would shape the future of ocean travel. The legacy of the Titanic is not just one of loss and sorrow, but also of lessons learned and changes made to prevent such a disaster from ever happening again. Memorial services were held around the world to honor the victims and commemorate their bravery in the face of unimaginable adversity. The tragedy of the Titanic touched hearts globally, transcending borders and cultures. In cities from Belfast to New York and from London to Cape Town, communities came together in shared grief. Interfaith services were conducted, with priests, rabbis, and imams offering prayers for the departed souls. Candles were lit, and poignant hymns echoed in cathedrals, synagogues, and mosques. The world stood united, mourning the loss of those who perished in the icy depths of the Atlantic. In the years following the disaster, the Titanic became more than a sunken ship. It evolved into a symbol of human ambition, fragility, and the unpredictability of life. It became a reminder that no matter how advanced our technology, we remain at the mercy of nature's whim. The legacy of the Titanic continues to influence maritime regulations and safety measures. The disaster led to the establishment of the International Ice Patrol to monitor iceberg dangers. It also resulted in stricter lifeboat requirements and improved radio communications on ships, forever changing the course of maritime safety. The Titanic's story has permeated popular culture, featuring in books, films, and songs, ensuring the memory of that fateful night lives on. It has inspired countless works of art and literature, serving as a muse for artists and writers alike. Museums dedicated to the Titanic have sprung up worldwide, showcasing artifacts recovered from the wreckage and preserving personal stories of the passengers and crew. These establishments serve as tangible reminders of the human lives intertwined with the ship's ill-fated journey. Today, the wreckage of the Titanic serves as a solemn reminder of the fragility of human life and the enduring legacy of one of history's greatest maritime disasters. Beneath the waves, it remains a silent testament to the lives lost, the heroic acts of bravery, and the lessons learned, forever echoing the haunting refrain, "Remember the Titanic."